Hi, and welcome back to writing automated cucumber tests. Today we're going to have a look at writing page objects as part of your cucumber test. We will look at what page objects are and why you would need to write page objects, and we will look at how to write page objects. So first of all, a few of you have actually suggested that I write, or rather create, this video on writing page objects as part of my cucumber video series. I did at times just kind of redirect you to my Java page object video series, but I think it will be a good idea if I actually go ahead and just do this page object video, and it'll probably be a good way to kick off the new year anyway. So just a quick footnote, my old blog has now disappeared, and now there's this new blog which I'm going to build over time, but more on that a little bit later. So the first thing we're going to do in regards to building this page object is just go through a really quick example using one of my test sites. And the test site that I'm going to use is the Java test site. So if I click on that, that's now loaded up my test site. And the example we're going to use is we're going to go to this contact page. And on the contact page, we're going to fill in this form. So let's just fill it in with some random data for the moment. Hit send. And then we end up on this contact confirmation page, and we're just going to assert that we're on the right page. That's it. So before we actually look at code, for those who don't know what a page object is, let me go through that really quickly. So what is page object, or what does it mean to have a page object? Before we actually talk about a page object, let's just take a moment to just look at this page and what this page actually is. So first of all, this is your bog standard HTML page. It's nothing too fancy. It's got a few links, it's got headings, it's got text, it's got footers, it's got links inside, subfooters, and so on. When we look at these, say, elements on a page, so this link can be referred to as an element, this text on this page can be referred to as an element, this really small paragraph can be referred to as an element, the table itself can be referred to as an element. The entire page can be referred to as an element. Basically, anything on a page can be translated to what is called an element. So if we go to the contact page, we've got more examples, such as input fields, radio buttons, checkboxes, sliders. These objects on a page are what we call elements on a page. And what a page object is quite literally the code translation of this page. So a page object is effectively a piece of code, or rather a class of code, that represents objects on a page. More specifically, it allows you to interact with objects on a page without having to write, say, a low-level driver find element or locator-based statements. So this will make a lot more sense once we actually start writing page objects. So I have written a really basic test just to get us started. So in this test here, I have a really basic feature file, nothing too fancy. I've got a background step in which I am navigating to the zoo site. And then once I'm on the zoo site, I click on the contact link, which we did. Then I populate a whole lot of information on the page, including submitting the form. And then once I've submitted the form, I checked the confirmation page. And once I do that, I close the browser. So to do this, I've got a step definition class. All the step definition class does is, again, nothing too complicated. It creates an instance of driver, and then for each step, I am doing something via a method that particularly maps to each given step. So if we quickly run this, just to make sure this works. Okay. So if we have a look, we can see that each step executed without any issues, and in the end, it passed. So if I have a quick look at the assertion, what I'm basically doing is using a CSS selector to get the heading on that page. We have your message. So really quickly, if I just show this to you, so if I go there, if I just quickly hit send, and I just do an inspect on that, I can see that this particular heading is inside this td tag, which has a class called content, and in the content I'm using this h1 tag, and inside that I'm just looking at the text. Hence dot content, i.e. looking at a class value and then looking at its child tag, which happens to be h1, and then the value of that, which is we have your message. Right, so now that we know our test works, what I now need to do is translate this entire thing, or rather translate this piece of code here to start using page objects instead. Now, quickly going back, when I said that these elements here all can be translated into a piece of code in a class which represents a page object, that is what we're going to do now. So to look at page objects, what we need to do is basically figure out what our sequence of events are. So the first thing we do quite literally is navigate to this index page or the root page of the site. So the very first page object would need to write is basically the very first page you'd expect to hit, which happens to be this landing page. So we can start thinking about doing that first. So if I right click here, create new, and I'll create a class, and I'll call this class landing page. And just finish that. So what I'll do is I'll move this about. Instead of putting it in this Maven Cucumber example package, I'll move it to something like page object instead. Okay, so it's in page object. Now what I should do is start writing methods here which basically mimic certain things on the home page. For example, access to these links, maybe getting access to this, access to this footer, and so on. For the moment, my journey doesn't include any of this. It just quite simply goes to the contact page and then starts to mess around with the contact page fields. So on the landing page, the only thing I need to worry about is providing some means of going to the contact page. But before we do that, if we go to the step definition class, if you notice, the first thing we actually do is create this instance of the driver. Before we do anything else, this is the first thing we do. So I can quite easily do that here. I can just create a new WebDriver and driver and so on. But if I do that, then that means for each page object that I create, and notice we're going to need one for home page, we're going to need one for contact page, and then we're going to need one for the contact confirm page. I'm basically going to end up repeating this same thing in 3 different places. And that's not good code practice. One of the principles of good code practice is to reduce code duplication. So how can we do this? How can we write this code so that it is created in only one place but reused multiple times? Well, the thing we can do, and a typical solution to reducing code duplication when it comes to page objects, is to use what's called an abstract page. So an abstract page is something I tend to use a lot. It's not something that's kind of solidified within the page object model. It's something you can use if you want to use or not. I tend to go with it. So what I'm going to do is create a abstract page. Before we go into this abstract page, let me talk about a bit about this page object pattern that I just mentioned. The focus of the page object pattern is to basically write page objects where you eventually end up with the ability to jump from one page to another page in a single statement without having to say write new page and then go to one page and then having to write a new page and go to another page. It should quite literally allow you to effectively daisy chain actions that you would take on a user page. For example, go to home page, go to contact page, fill in this form, click this button. Now we can easily do that and it's not a problem. But if we look at our step definitions, in our step definitions, we don't do that. We actually do each step individually. For instance, here, when I say I enter value into the name field, I then don't, within the same step, say, and the address field and the postcode field. In this case, the page object pattern wouldn't really apply. But that said, there's nothing stopping us from writing, let's just say, a step, which simply says, and populate entire field, in which case we would be able to do it. But anyway, that's kind of a side argument. Let's go back to our abstract page and actually start writing these pages. So the first thing I said we should do is create this abstract page. So the first thing we actually need to do is create an instance of WebDriver. Now, our pages, so in this case this landing page, they're all going to inherit from this abstract page. So if they're going to inherit, we can set an access modifier of protected on this WebDriver. For those who don't know what protected is, it basically means any page inheriting from this page gets access to these class member variables, but otherwise anything else trying to access, say, this particular variable will not be able to because it's protected. The idea of protected is quite simply this is treated as a private variable inside this class, and anything inheriting from this class automatically gets it. I'm not going to jump into too much about access modifiers. This is a topic for another day. Anyway, let's carry on. So it's saying that it needs to import a WebDriver, so I go ahead and do that. The next thing I'm going to do is actually create a constructor for the abstract page, and I'm going to pass in driver, and I'm going to say this driver is equal to driver. So what does this mean? This is basically a constructor that is used to basically create this page. It's almost like saying this is what is used to create the blueprint of this object. And inside this blueprint, I'm just going to pass in an instance of driver and make that equal to this driver here. Or rather, make it equal to whatever instance of driver I pass in and instantiate this driver with whatever I pass in. The other thing I need to do in this abstract page is actually be able to navigate to my test site. So in this case, I'm going to say public landing page. Navigate to web app. And in here, I'm going to say driver.navigate to. So here, this is where we can actually go back to our step definition and try to pick out these pieces of code and put it in our page objects. So I can say here, this is the first thing I do. This is where I navigate to the test site. I can quite simply do this here. This will now navigate to our Java test site. So like I said, part of the contract of this page object model is to give you the ability to chain actions via page objects. So how can I do that? So in this method here, all I'm saying is this method, which is a public method, returns a landing page object, i.e. it returns an instance of this class. And the way I invoke it is by calling this method here. But how can I actually get an instance of this class in this method? Well, that's quite simple. All you do is return a new landing page and pass it an instance of driver. So what this will do now is actually once it's performed this action, so once it's done this, in this instance what it's doing is quite simply navigating to the test site. It's going to return a new landing page with an instance of driver. So if we go back to this landing page and now we say extends, and then we add in the constructor, what's happening now is if we were to say create a landing page and pass in an instance of driver, it would call the super driver, i.e. it would basically pass the same instance of driver to the abstract page constructor here. And in return, we would then have access to driver here. So basically, this now allows us to chain commands going from one page to another. This is going to become a lot more clearer as we write more page objects. But for the moment, all you need to take from this is this will perform an action, in this case navigate to our test site, and then return a new instance of landing page with our instance of driver. Right. So if we go to our step definition, we now have effectively satisfied this. We've basically have written a method that allows us to navigate to the site. So the next step here is, it looks like I need to be able to click on, in this case, the contact page, which is effectively performed on the landing page. So what does that mean? What that means is we're on the landing page, i.e. this home page. The contact link is on this landing page, and this is where we actually click on the contact link anyway. So if we right click on this and inspect this really quickly, we can see that it has an ID attribute with a value of contact underscore link. So we're going to use this attribute to click on the contact link, which is literally what is happening right here. All we're doing is we're finding an element by ID and we're passing in the value of link, which in this case is contact. So as you can see, it says when I click on contact, which is mapping to this step here, all I'm doing is taking the value of contact, in this case link, converting it to a lowercase, and then appending it with underscore link, and then clicking on that. So contact underscore link matches up to this value here. So what I need to do now is basically translate this into a method in here. So if I follow the same principles I did for this method in the abstract page, if I say public contact page, let's just say navigate to contact page, and I need to pass in the link obviously, and I say this, what I can do now is return a new contact page with an instance of driver. So now if we think about it, on the abstract page we have a landing page method which allows us to navigate to the web app. If I then wrote this method in our test, I should be in theory able to then say dot navigate to contact page. So I'm jumping from one page to another in a single statement, and all of the class management is taken care for me. So the next thing we need to do is, like you said, is now that we've, I suppose, satisfied this as well, the next thing to do is to start populating all of these fields. So in this case, we've got a name field, an address, a postcode, and an email field, all which happen on the same page. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we need to do is create a contact page. And it's also going to sit inside our page object. I'm going to go ahead and extend the abstract page and import in the constructor. And in here, what I need to do now is basically start writing methods for each one of these. So there's one, and let's comment that out. There's another one for the address field. There's a third one for the postcode. There's a fourth one for the email. And comment that out. And we also have the press submit button. And let's go ahead and comment that out also. So let's go ahead and write methods for each one of these. So the first thing I want to do is public contact page, and let's just say set name field, public contact page, set address field, oops, public contact page, set postcode field, public contact page, set email field, and the final one was public, and the final one is the submit button, and the submit button should actually navigate us to the contact confirmation page. We're going to say contact confirm page, submit form. Right, so now if we move these methods into their rightful place, or rather move these statements into their rightful place. And also pass in values. And also return a new contact page with our instance of driver, and copy that across to all of them. So what's happening now is, if we were to say navigate to this contact page class object, and we set the value of the name field to whatever the value we pass in, because it's going to return us a new instance of this page with our instance of driver inside it, we can basically call any other method in this same class without having to create a new object. So this is, like I said, part of the page object contract. So this issue here of contact confirmation page, the reason we're getting this red line is because that page doesn't exist, and we need to create it as part of our web journey. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that also. And in this last page, well, the first thing we need to do is obviously extend the abstract page again and add in the constructor. And in this last page, if we go back to our test, what we do is we get the value of the heading on that page. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and I might as well comment that out now. So if I go to contact confirmation page, what I will do is say public string get page title, and I'm just going to say return that. Okay, so we now have taken care of this. And the final thing it looks like is the ability to quit the driver. So to quit the driver, I can obviously put it in the contact page if I want to, but a more natural place to put that method would be in the abstract page. Why? Because if I put it in the abstract page, because all of these methods here are effectively inherited in any object that extend from it, that means I can call the driver quit method wherever I want. So I guess I can just say public void close driver, and I'll just go ahead and say driver dot let's just quit the driver altogether. Okay, so now if I just quickly save everything. So when you save, usually if there are any errors, they are flagged up. So the good news is it looks like we actually don't have any errors in any of our page objects, which is probably more lucky than anything. Usually there's something, whether it's syntactical or whether something doesn't make sense to the IDE. But anyway, so we now have our page objects. So if we look at the page objects, what is actually happening? Well, we have an abstract page which is basically taking care of driver management for us, some really basic driver management, and it gives us the ability to navigate to that site whenever we want and the ability to quit. The landing page is only taking care of what's specific to the landing page. So in this case, it's allowing us to click on the contact link, nothing else, and that is the only thing we need to complete our test. The contact page is allowing us to fill in 4 different fields, as well as pressing the submit button at the bottom, which is supposed to return us a contact confirmation page. And all the contact confirmation page is doing is giving us the ability to grab the title on that page, nothing else. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, by writing these pages, we actually are isolating functionality to each given page object. We're trying our best not to duplicate efforts across pages, which is good. So for instance, if you notice this contact link, where we navigate to the contact link, this link doesn't just sit on the home page, it sits on almost every single page. So one thing you can do is you can actually move this into the abstract page. That way every page ends up with this contact link. Page objects allow us to basically write code such as this, i.e. the location or the ability to find elements on a page in one place, and the only thing we need to do is if this field was to ever change, or if the value of that field was to ever change, we just go and change it in one place. Page objects actually give us a lot of advantages in maintaining code in a more easy fashion. Anyway, let's go ahead and actually start using these page objects. So if we run our test now, basically nothing will happen. It's going to open up a brand new Firefox window and it's going to close it, and nothing else is actually going to happen. So let's just make sure that actually happens. There you go. So clearly there was nothing to do because we commented everything out. So let's go ahead and actually start populating these pages again. So what do we need? Well, we need a landing page. Or rather, what's the first thing we actually need to do? The first thing we need to do is navigate to our test site. So let's do that. So we can say landing page. Let's just say landing page is equal to new landing page. Let's go ahead and import that in. And we're going to pass in our instance of driver. And the first thing we need to do is landing. Let's call it landing page. And we're going to navigate to the web app. To make things a little bit more easier, let's move this out here and get rid of this. So this will now basically navigate to the web app for us. The next thing we said we would do is navigate to the contact page. So if I did landing page dot navigate to contact page, and here I'm going to just say contact, or rather it should actually be the link because we're passing that in from our feature file. This is now going to navigate to the contact page. So once we navigate to the contact page, we need to capture this information somewhere. In other words, we are returning a value here. So we need to basically capture this in our test, and then we can perform all contact page related actions in our test. So if we just say, let's do that up here, in fact, let's say contact page, and let's just say contact page. We can now say contact page. Oops. We can say contact page is equal to landing page to navigate to contact page. And let's go ahead and import that in also. So in here, because we've created a contact page and we've effectively instantiated it here in this method, we can now say contact page dot set name field and then the value. In this one, we can say contact page dot set address and the value. We're going to do the same thing here. We can say contact page dot set postcode and then the value. And in here we can do the same and say set email and then the value. In here we can say contact page dot submit form. And we know that when you submit a form on the contact page, it returns a contact confirmation page. So let's go ahead and save that as well. We'll import it in and we will say contact confirmation page is equal to contact page.submit form, and fix that. In the assertion, we can do a similar thing. We can say assert true, and we can say contact confirm page dot get page title contains we have your message. And in the final one, instead of saying driver.quit, remember what we did was we decided we're going to create this close driver in the abstract page, which means we can effectively access it from anywhere. We'll just say contact confirm page dot close driver. So now, if you have a look, let me expand that a bit. We've actually removed all of these direct calls using driver and are now using page objects to do our navigation for us instead. So the first thing to do would obviously be to actually run a test and see if it still works. So let's do that. Fingers crossed, should work first time. Yay, so it looks like it actually worked on the first time. I suppose this is a good start to the new year. Things usually don't go very well, not on the first test run. It's usually you have to debug something and figure out what you did wrong. But that's good. So that means our page objects have now worked. So what kind of value do you get by doing something like this? Well, this is what I was trying to kind of explain without using code. Let's go back to our feature file, and instead of saying name, test, address, postcode, and email, let's take out these 3 steps. And in here, let's remove this, and let's just say, in fact, let's remove this altogether, and let's just say, and I populate the entire form, something like that. Obviously, if I run it now, I should get an error saying this method doesn't exist. So let's just run this. Okay, close that. And as you can see here, it says that this method doesn't exist. So go ahead and write this method, and we'll do that. So we'll go to the step definition class first, and let's just add it in here. And this was an and. And what I will do now is basically use this contact page to basically perform all of these methods, but in a single statement. So I can say contact page dot. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the name. So let's just say name, so we're not passing anything. And now I can do set address, and let's just say address dot set postcode. Let's just say postcode dot set email, and let's just say email. Let's tidy this up a bit. So this here, although it looks like a very small amount of code, this is actually an incredibly powerful amount of code, because what's happening is you're basically creating objects in the background, which might not be very efficient as far as Java is concerned. But from a page object point of view, you're actually performing various actions, all which makes literally English sense in that you can almost read it as what is happening in a single step without having to go through all of the steps, all taken care of you by a page object. Also notice, I'm not having to write methods such as these over and over again. These are all taken care of me by the page object pattern. So if I now run this test, theoretically this should pass first time also. There you go. It's used our populate form field instead, and the need to perform these other steps is now gone because we have this page object pattern implemented. Obviously it doesn't matter. Obviously you can end up writing it this way if you want to. There's nothing really strictly wrong with that. But the downside is, for every step you write, you will have to repeat this code every time you do it. However, if we use page objects, especially if we take full advantage of how page objects work, we can end up writing a single step that does a lot of things for us. There's a lot of things here which are taking care for us. There's an overhead of elbow grease involved when you write page objects for the first time, in that you have to write them, you have to make sure you're satisfying the contract agreement as far as the page object model is concerned. But once it's done, this is the kind of powerful advantage you get out of it. So we've gone through a lot in this video, but the focus of this video was quite literally to show you how you would write page objects as part of writing Cucumber test. I hope you find this video useful and informative, and well, that's it for this video, folks. Thanks for watching. Hi guys, I really appreciate you watching my videos, and if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you already haven't, hit the subscribe button below. Also, follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Google. Links in the description below. Until next time, ciao.